Betrayal, a word too familiar, pierced my heart. Tara, my love, turned to shadows, her whispers with Carl haunting my dreams. How could you? I choked, betrayal's weight crushing. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Tara's voice trembled, a feeble attempt at justification. And you, Carl? We made music, not war, I spat, the bitterness of treachery thick in my voice. They, entangled in deceit, left me adrift in a sea of lies. Revenge, a tempting specter, whispered dark promises. Watch closely, I vowed, the echo of my resolve a shadowy prelude to retribution. This is my tale of love lost, self-found, and the intricate dance of vengeance. Enjoy watching it. Every time long, cool woman in a black dress graces my eardrums, my mind can't help but drift to that distinct rocking chair, igniting memories as vivid as the song itself. It's funny how songs anchor us to moments in our past, painting our memories with a melodic brush. Take, for example, Oasis's Wonderwall, a song that, thanks to its dreadfully British tone, forever ties me to Jenny Lydon. Our prom's theme song it was, and Jenny in her form-fitting low-cut ensemble owned the night. But I digress. Let me bring you back to the rocking chair. This wasn't just any rocking chair. Crafted by the legendary Sam Maloof prior to his passing, it came with a hefty price tag of $20,000, a fortune for a piece of furniture. Yet calling it mere furniture would be an understatement. It was, without a shadow of a doubt, a masterpiece. Sculpted from Clara walnut, its smooth joinery and impeccable craftsmanship solidified its place as a work of art. It was the only legacy of any worth my father left behind, and despite everything, I cherished it deeply. Upon entering my Brentwood mansion, the sound of music greeted me. The intricate guitar arpeggios and pulsing power chords of Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress filled the air, leading into vocals enveloped in a heavy reverb. I decided to shed my jacket on the back of the couch, drawn by the rhythm into the family room. After a demanding day negotiating a new deal at the agent's office, all I craved was the solace of my chair, a cold beer, and possibly some comfort from Tara, despite her recent moodiness owing to the upcoming filming season. However, what I stumbled upon in the family room stopped me dead in my tracks. There was Tara, indeed, in the mood, but not in the way I had hoped. Entwined with her in both a literal and figurative sense was my bandmate, Carl. The two of them were making unconventional use of my cherished Maloof rocking chair. My emotions were a whirlwind, betrayal, anger, and an inexplicable sense of violation as they defiled my favorite piece of art. A cascade of thoughts hammered down on me. Why Carl? Why here, of all places? And then, an odd curiosity crept in. Had Sam Maloof ever envisioned his chairs being used in such a manner? If they damaged that chair, retribution would be the least of their worries. Rooted to the spot, it took the length of the instrumental break in the song for Carl to notice me, his expression morphing into one of shock as he attempted to disentangle himself from the compromised situation. Despite the turmoil inside, I found myself frozen, unable to act. Any rash move would catapult us into a media frenzy, something I couldn't afford, both for the sake of my hands and the band's future prospects. I retreated silently, heading towards the solitude of my bedroom, where I was soon joined by a remorseful Tara. Her attempts at justification fell on deaf ears. The thought of confrontation had crossed my mind before, yet facing it in reality, I found myself numb and disinterested. Instead, I began packing, my actions speaking louder than any words could. As I prepared to leave, Carl faced me with an apology I wasn't ready to accept. All I wanted was my chair. Anything else, including their explanations, held no value to me. With a heavy heart, I directed them to pack my awards and accolades along with my belongings, declaring my departure. Even amidst the chaos, Carl's concern for the band's negotiations hinted at the professional storm brewing on the horizon. As I loaded my Escalade and returned to confront the shell of my former life, Carl's question of where I was heading resonated with a profound sense of uncertainty. Yet, I knew I needed distance, to regroup and reassimilate my shattered thoughts and feelings away from the remnants of a life that once was. I pulled the chair next to the Escalade, tossed it in the back where a couple of guitars were already lying around from a few days back. Then I went to jump in the car. "Nick, man, give me a sec," Carl begged. I dropped my head, counting under my breath. "This wasn't supposed to go down like this," he kept on. "You've been out there all day, dude." I shot him a look. "So what went wrong? Did you look after her, or did I get you to?" I didn't stick around for his answer, eager to take off. 3 hours out and a good 250 miles west from the city of Angels, I thought. Let it sink. Well, not all of it, just Brentwood. "Where to?" he croaked, voice rough from smoking too much. "Home," I muttered without turning. "Home to Brentwood, home to the place," I said. "But you left," he pointed out. "Yeah, things change," I answered. "That's it?" He smirked. "Just leave it all behind, forget her." I kept quiet as he did for the next 30 miles. "They're all the same," he finally said. "Not all," I responded. "No," he conceded. "Just the ones you pick." I nodded. He was right. "Why do you say that?" He laughed, a deep laugh that turned into a cough. "'Cause you're stubborn." "Great," I said. "Looks like I learned from the best." "Screw you," I sighed. This was a dead end, and I knew a fight wouldn't be far off. And then he vanished. Weirdly, I wished he'd stay a bit longer. We drove in silence until I looked over at him. He seemed the same. Reaching out would do no good. My hand would pass right through. Still, his mix of cigarette smoke and cologne hung around. "You know," he finally said, "should have shown him." "And what good would that do?" "He'd think twice next time." "For heaven's sake, Walter," I said. "He should have known better right from the start. So should she." "But they didn't stop, did they?" Walter shrugged. "Guess not. But you'd feel better not running away." "Yeah," I replied. "Then I'd just have sore hands to deal with. Plus, the media frenzy, and they'd still be all over each other in my damn chair." "My chair," he pointed out. "I bought it." "Yeah, but now you're gone," I stated. "So it's mine." He looked away, watching the night zip by at 80 miles an hour. "Guess you're right," he admitted. Yet, he added, I'd still beat him up. We were nearing the turn from Interstate 15 to Interstate 70 when my cell buzzed. It was almost 11, and I had been driving for close to 8 hours. The call snapped me out of my daze, reminding me I was getting tired. Seeing who it was, I picked up. "Hey, John," I said. "Nick, where in the world are you?" he shouted, background noise drowning him out. "Utah," I said. "What on earth are you doing in Utah?" "Driving," I heard John yell to someone else, then back to me. "Nick, you have to come back. You're the glue, man, and we're on the brink of something big." "Let Ethan handle it," I said. Ethan Rose was our guy, making enough to care about the big picture. "But man," John whined, "he needs you. They want to see what we've got. Ethan can't show them. Only you can." "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up, switching my phone off. We formed Leadfoot back in high school. There were 4 of us, Teddy Cooper on lead guitar, Carl Simpson on bass, Vince Diamond on drums, and me doing rhythm guitar and vocals. We had a bit of an Eagles vibe until Teddy got into alt-country rock. I still remember hearing it for the first time at his place, and we both fell hard for that sound. The next day, Teddy and I wrote our first song. It came easy, music-wise. Lyrics, not so much. Then Teddy got deep into books, highbrow stuff, poetry, even the Bible. Said it helped him write. And he was right. Soon, we were pumping out tunes with solid words to match. Then it was summer, post-graduation, and Lightfoot won a local talent show, sending us to a bigger stage with dancers, magicians, and other musicians. We nailed our set. Even old-timers loved it. That's when you know you've hit something special. When they said we were second to a cute kid dancer named Shirley Temple, the crowd went wild. Later, a guy around 30 with slick hair and shiny gems on him named Ethan Rose came up. He worked for Harmony Records. He told us they were on the hunt for something new and asked if we'd be open to meet up. We said yes and spent the next 3 weeks before college trying out in Nashville and Memphis. A month in, with college started, Ethan got back to us with a deal to make music. That's when things got messy. Teddy didn't want in anymore. He thought we'd just be selling out to make a quick buck. I called him out, but deep down, Teddy was just scared of failing and losing what he had. He was the brains, with a full ride to college. He didn't dream of fame. He wanted to teach. So he left. Over Christmas, Ethan hustled to find us a new lead guitar. Me and Carl Vinson flew to Memphis to pick someone. With Ethan and the record company's push, we chose John Boomer. John was a bit older, but a pro at guitar. He'd been in the game since his teens, and the folks at the record company thought he'd mesh well with us. He did. He could sing a bit and help me write tunes. Lyrics weren't his thing, though, so that was on me. Carl and Vince were cool just playing and singing when needed. You know the next bit. Our first album, Somewhere Down Highway 66, blew up. Then, Playing States, our second, went even bigger, selling over 13 million. For 6 years, we've been living off those hits. Now, we're talking new deals. Harmony passed us off, and Columbia was eyeing a 5-record deal. They liked us, but wanted proof we could keep it up. That's where I came in, trying to show we had more hits in us. The trouble was, our song pile was lacking. Sure, slapping our name on them would sell some, but that spark was fading. I saw it, but the guys, including Ethan, didn't want to face it. They figured we'd just sell whatever and cash in. But Columbia saw through our thin pile and still offered a sweet deal. So here I was, fighting to keep the band afloat, fighting for better pay, and fighting to keep our fans, even those who'd turned on us. And the thanks I get? Non-stop hassle and Carl's messing around with my wife. Lovely. By 2 p.m. on Wednesday, after 22 hours driving, Nebraska's endless view had me nodding off. Bruce Springsteen even wrote an album about this place, which made me respect him more. Too tired to keep going, I stopped in Grand Island at a Holiday Inn, barely made it into the room, charged my phone, kicked on the AC, and crashed hard on the bed. I was out cold, haunted by dreams where Tara kept showing up, never in a good way. Woke up to the cool room, drenched in sweat, trying to shake off the dreams. Glanced at my cell. "Hey, Ethan," I answered, short on patience. "Jesus Christ, where are you?" he shot back. I wasn't in the mood. "I'm out for a bit, Ethan," I said. "Handle it. I'll look it over when I can. But don't sign a thing till then, got it?" A pause. "Nick," he sounded worried. "You're not thinking of bailing on us, right?" I kept quiet. "We'll dump the troublemaker before losing you," he rushed. "Bass players are everywhere, even the good ones like Carl." "Great," I thought. "This will be news soon." "We'll talk," I said. "Do what you can, but wait for my say." I hung up before he could respond. Darkness had fallen, and it was nearly 10 p.m. After getting enough sleep, I made sure to shower, clean up, change into fresh clothes, and hit the road again. The memories of the bad dreams and the call with Ethan rushed back. I couldn't wait to leave Nebraska behind. 3.5 hours later, I found myself in Iowa. "So you're thinking of dropping everything?" Walter asked. "Joining a group with big money?" "I don't know," I replied. I really didn't. "But it's on your mind?" he pressed. I nodded. Ethan had a point, according to Walter. If fighting wasn't for me, maybe letting the group handle things was the way to go. Why should I be the one to run? Then I'd have the band, the cash, the fame, and my payback on Carl. Without me, where would he even go? "Maybe I wanted to leave regardless," I suggested. Walter laughed it off. "Yeah, right," I snapped back. I remembered the highs after the first few hits, then the steep drop. Fame got to me, I admitted internally, jotting down the thought. Walter stayed quiet for an hour, so I focused on driving. Iowa, with its slight hills, felt a bit better than Nebraska, especially as we neared the Mississippi River. Breaking the silence, Walter mentioned bringing someone back. I knew too well and reminded him it wasn't why I ditched Nick. It was over long before. "Trudy?" I asked. He confirmed. Sure, Trudy made leaving easier. Walter agreed, admitting his faults. He drew a parallel with a famous writer, noting how fame, not Trudy, ended things. "Working and being celebrities put strain on us," he explained. "The constant attention and the lack of private time did no favors to personal life, yet we thought we had it better than most. That thought lingered until reality hit hard recently." "Mom," I called, entering my home in Grant City after 7 years. The house was unlocked, a small town thing. Inside it looked familiar yet slightly changed. My mom appeared, surprised but not alone, suggesting she had company. Catching her at a wrong time, I teased. She scolded me playfully before giving me a tight hug, the first in over 8 months. She then mentioned Bob, Dr. Bob, which caught me off guard. Despite the age difference, she seemed happy. Dr. Bob, joining in, greeted me warmly. No need for advance notice, he assured. Heading to the kitchen, my mom insisted on making me food, sensing my hunger. And right she was. My stomach grumbled in agreement. It had been too long since I had a proper meal, living off snacks during my journey from California. Bob and I were catching up on what's been going on in Grant City while Mom was busy in the kitchen making grilled cheese and tomato soup. That's my top pick since I was a kid, and no one does it better than Mom. She makes the soup from scratch and keeps it frozen. "So how's Tara?" Bob asked as we sat down in the kitchen. I tried to force a smile, but couldn't. "Problem?" Mom chimed in. "Her or you?" Bob pressed. When I looked confused, he clarified, "Who's cheating, her or you? Or is it both?" He chuckled. "You're both in California, after all." "It's her," I said, "with Carl." "Carl Simpson?" Mom interjected. I nodded. "He was no good," she remarked, taking a bite of her sandwich. Bob almost choked from surprise, trying to hold back his laugh. "Mom's always been straight to the point more than anyone. That's probably why Walter loved her so much, and why her students adored her. She called things as they were, and her book reviews were brutally honest. She wasn't a fan of Moby Dick, and she'd tell anyone who'd listen. Thaddeus Thibodeau, the head of Chadwick College, wasn't too keen on her frankness, but couldn't easily fire a professor who was so liked by students and recognized nationwide. To him, having her was a big win for a small place like Chadwick, but he often regretted it. "Carol," Bob finally said. "She's always been like that, straightforward," Mom said. "Little Eddie Haskell, who's been a pain from the start. You look nice today, Mrs. Harlan. Did you do something new with your hair? All fake. Even as a kid." I nodded. She was right, but parents often fell for it. Carl was always polite and helpful around adults, but was the first to misbehave when they weren't looking. "So what's the plan?" Bob asked. I shrugged, finishing my sandwich. "I don't know," I responded, mouth full. After swallowing, I added, "If it's fine with you, I'd like to stay here for a bit, Mom, just to clear my head. It's tough to think straight in L.A., you know." She considered this for a moment, then agreed. "That's fine, as long as Bob doesn't mind." I was surprised. "Bob? We live together now," she explained, holding his hand. "You're joking, right?" I asked Bob about Elaine. "She left," he replied. "Your mom and I have been together for 8 months. And you didn't tell me?" I said to my mom. "It's none of your business," she shot back. "If you cared, you would have called. But you didn't." "I did call," I protested. "That was on New Year's Eve," Bob corrected. "That night changed everything. Bob and Mom got together then and have been since. Truth be told, they're a good match. Mom is lively and they both seem happy." "So can I stay?" I asked Bob, trying not to laugh. He agreed, and we all had a good laugh about the unexpected turns life takes. Next morning, after a good sleep, I found a note from Mom saying she and Bob were out. I didn't want to stay in alone, so I headed to the Hitchhiker's Hitch, a local restaurant with great homemade food. It was busy, so I sat at the bar. Then someone called my name. It was Victoria, the owner, who gave me a big hug. She and her husband, Ron, had been running the place for years. It was nice to see familiar faces again. They were tough bosses. I got it into my head quick. Only way to make it in this place was to aim for perfect, every time. But the young ones they brought in? We turned into something like a family, and they treated us kind of like the kids they never had. Birthday gifts, cards with cash when we graduated, but make a small slip at work, and boy did we hear it. They were the only ones who called me Nicky. "Been ages, Nick," she said. "Too long. I think it's been too long, too." I looked around, seeing faces I knew. Some nodded my way, and I smiled back. "Changed much, Vic?" I asked. She gave me a look. "Nope, still the best burger around." She grabbed my hand, leading me. "You gotta say hi to Ron." Ron was swamped, but still in his element, barking orders. He froze when he saw us. "Nicky?" He grinned big as ever, despite missing those 2 teeth from that fight abroad. He pulled me into a tight hug. "Damn, son, good to have you back." Then he pushed me back a bit, eyeing me up and down. "You look rough," he said straight up. "When'd you last sleep?" I tried joking about my health nut phase, but he wasn't having it. He chuckled, said something about folks eating nonsense these days. "We'll get you sorted," he promised, calling out for a hefty burger as Vic pulled me away. She had a surprise, leading me to a secluded spot. "What's this?" I asked. She nudged me to look towards a new waitress, a redhead stacking drinks. Took a moment, but then it hit me. "Is that?" "Yeah, Nikki," she confirmed. "Started here a few months back." I just nodded, thanking her as she showed me to my table. Glancing around, I saw faces from my school days, looking content in this slice of Americana. Then there she was. Amy Standish, looking every bit the dream from high school, didn't seem to know me from Adam. "Hi, Amy," I managed, voice cracking. "Hi," she said, not even pausing in her rush to get my order and move on. I watched as she worked the room, thinking back. Amy was always out of my league, smart, distant, not one for the social scene. I was just this average Joe, despite any fame from my old man. It didn't matter. To her, I was invisible, even when I'd mustered the courage to ask her out. She had been polite, but clear. Back in the day, I'd watch her from my spot in the kitchen, admiring her way of breezing through her shift with minimal fuss. Ron, seeing my hopeless case, had only offered a shrug when my grand plan fell flat. In that moment, as she served me without a hint of recognition, all those high school emotions came rushing back. I tried to forget it, but a week later, Ron found me as I stood by the kitchen door looking at Amy. "Victoria says she's shy," he told me. "That's why she's so quiet. Her folks made her work here to help with that, and Vicky thinks she's making progress." I nodded. Felt like it'd take forever to really talk to her. But that talk never came. 10 months later, right before we both went off to college, she finally said, "Hey, Nick." That was the first time she used my name, and the joy I felt was huge. Years later, I'd sometimes think of her smile when she spoke to me, just me, that once. My heart still jumps at the thought. "So how's Amy?" I asked Jimmy Schultz. We sat at a bar, sipping beer and talking about old times. Jimmy had been top in running back in the day. Now he sold insurance in Grant City, took over his dad's place. "Still into her, huh?" He didn't wait for an answer, just nodded towards where she was. We both looked. "She's tall, about 5'8". Met a guy in college," he shared. "An engineer, I think. Saw them once here, years back, very quiet, both of them." He took a big gulp of beer. "Married right after college," he continued. "Had a little boy, lived in New York, I think. She was teaching, he was doing his engineer thing. Then a year ago she comes back, just her and the kid, no husband. Heard he left with a coworker, a guy." He glanced at me, trying to get a read, but I kept my face still. "Guess that's not shocking, you living in California and all," he joked. "What's she up to now?" I tried to steer us back. Jimmy laughed. "Teaches English at the middle school. Works here Thursdays and Fridays. I think her folks help with her kid." "Seeing anyone?" I asked. "Whoa, man." Jimmy looked at me, serious now. "You're married to a great gal yourself. Leave some for the rest of us." I smiled, and he seemed okay with that, then looked back at Amy. "No, she's not seeing anyone. Trust me, a lot of us have tried. No luck with her." "Then why keep trying?" I asked. "Just to clear the air," he sighed. We got more beers. In Grant City, Illinois, no waitresses. I asked about another friend, Teddy, while we drank. "Sure," Jimmy said, having another beer. "Lives on Foster Road, up north. What's he doing these days?" I was curious. Jimmy stared, surprised. "Damn, Nick, you guys were close. Haven't seen him in 6 years?" I looked away. "Life got busy," I mumbled. Jimmy shook his head. "Well, he's doing all right. Lives well. Got married. Jenny Leiden, you know. They have kids. He teaches, just like Amy." "Does he come by here?" I wondered. Jimmy pointed at a poster. Teddy's band was playing soon. I laughed. "He quit the big time to play in a bar band? Maybe he likes it better." Jimmy shrugged. It hit me then. Teddy never wanted fame, just to teach and play music for fun. I remembered our last chat at a crowded party. Teddy seemed out of place. Maybe he found his happy spot, away from the spotlight. Teddy felt out of place in the world we lived in, a world I'd been okay with for a long time. That was just how things were. All Teddy wanted was a simple life, like the one his mom and dad had. A wife, kids, a job that made him happy, and a bit of music for fun on the side. He knew all about the downsides of fame, more so than any of us, and he didn't want any part of it. Then it hit me for the first time. Teddy was doing way better than I was. A lot better. "You look like you got smacked with a shovel," Walter said as we drove home in the dark. "I've just got a lot on my mind," I replied. Don't tell me Jimmy Schultz actually said something smart, he joked. No, I answered. It wasn't him. He wasn't all that smart, just had good, plain sense, which I've lost recently. We were almost home when I looked at Walter. Mom was born here, I said. Right, he agreed. Tyler, 15 miles from here. And you're from Chicago? Oak Brook? He asked. Close, I said. Chicago, fancy suburb, no real difference. But then I thought about it. But your mom, her folks, they were just regular small-town people, a drugstore man and a housewife. He nodded. So? Well, I started, your dad worked at the Tribune and your mom was kind of a big deal. If what you've told me is true, she came from an old packing house family. True, he defended. So what's your point? I took a moment before answering. My point is, you two never stood a chance. She was a small-town girl and you're a big city guy from a wealthy family. You grew up with famous and glamorous people while she hung out at soda shops and movie places with her friends. He got what I was saying. So we were doomed from the start. Yeah, I said, and your actions didn't help. When we have so little in common, sleeping around with every actress didn't make things any better. Did Jimmy think of all this? Walter asked. No, it was me. Jimmy just said something that got me thinking. And what was that? He asked. I shook my head. It's not about what he said, it's about me not thinking of it before. So what did he say? He said Teddy got exactly what he wanted. A simple dream, and I almost laughed at how silly that sounded. A small dream. I paused, looking at Walter. But then I realized I was seeing things from a Hollywood angle, from a star's view. Walter, I forgot about those simple dreams. Teddy has his music money, but he's happier with his family, his job, and his little band than I am with my famous wife, my big house, 10 times the money and no family. I even joked, my best friend is a ghost I didn't even like when he was alive. Walter looked hurt at that, and before I could say sorry, he vanished. He does that when he's mad, but he usually comes back for my apology. Walter first showed up after a show in Dallas a year after he died. I thought my drink was spiked when I turned and saw him, his eyes twinkling with jokes. I'd tried drugs before, but this felt too real. The chat we had was too normal. So for 3 months, I only talked to Walter when alone, as he only appeared then. It got weird, though. Even as Walter kept saying I wasn't crazy, I decided to see a doctor. The first few, thinking it was some tabloid story, told me to quit the substance. When I said it was from my past, they thought it was lingering effects. Still feeling low. Still seeing Walter now and then. I finally met a doctor who did a full check. Thankfully, I wasn't schizophrenic, but Dr. Solomon couldn't find anything wrong. 4 months of therapy followed. Tara, my wife, said it was normal among actors, a sign of being in touch with oneself. At therapy's end, Dr. Solomon closed his book, sat beside me, and shared his thoughts with a humor-filled look. What I think, he began, seeing my surprise, is you're dealing with a ghost. Maybe not a real ghost, but someone from your past. You need someone who gets you, helps with the stress. Your best mates, your band, they're part of the stress, not the solution. No, I said, the person who gets me who can help is Walter, right? He shook his head, smiling. No, Nick, it's you. You're the one who can sort through your issues. So, Walter is just me seeing things? He shrugged. This realization hit hard. All this time looking for answers and support, it had to come from me. Walter, or the idea of him, had been a weird comfort, but the real comfort had to be me facing my life head-on. Truth is, it's odd, but pics don't usually stick around that long. Yet, I believe you've got some deep issues with your dad. You always wished he was there for you growing up. But now, when you need him the most, he's not here. So, yeah, I think your deep mind is making up an image for you to sort out your troubles with. Your dad was the one you wanted help from the most, so I think the image your deep mind made is Walter. I nodded. Makes sense. So, is this something to worry about? Dr. Solomon gave a smile. No, Nick, honestly, it's out of the ordinary, but it's a healthy way to tackle the stress you're feeling. And as things calm down, you'll see Walter less and less, having these chats in your head without needing an image. I was feeling okay until Walter showed up the next day while I was working on song lyrics. Ever heard such nonsense? He said. Not listening to myself right now, I answered, eyes glued to the lyrics. I'm not! You're being silly, he said. I'm me, your dad, and I'm going to show you. Looking up, doubt all over my face. "I'll tell you stuff you don't know," he said. "Things you've never heard and things no one else knows either. Will that convince you?" I laughed, but then he made Dr. Solomon look foolish. Walter's missing manuscript, hidden in a fake log in a cabin I never visited, got published 8 months later to big cheers. A few beers, good talk, a late-night stroll, and a huge bacon cheeseburger I barely ate half of. In short, a solid night's sleep. When I woke up Friday morning, the sun was up and the house quiet. My clock showed it was almost 9, and I stretched, feeling happy. "Damn," I thought, seeing my smiling face while shaving. "Where have you been hiding?" If that was all it took, I should have come home to recharge ages ago. Even deleting 23 voicemails in one go didn't dim my smile. I bounded downstairs, grabbed a yogurt, ate it, then made fresh coffee. The only downside here in Grant City? No Starbucks. I went out to unload my guitars and rocking chair from the Escalade, ready to write music for the first time in a year. So, I wrote for nearly 11 hours nonstop. Bob popped in at lunch, but I was too into my work. I was in a flow I hadn't felt in years, jotting down chords, tempo, melody, and initial ideas. I read once how Lennon and McCartney came up with Hard Day's Night. Ringo, during a movie shoot, joked about a hard night, and they had no song for the film title. No issue. By next morning, they penned the whole tune. It's about being in that flow which comes and goes. Unless you're Lennon and McCartney. Those guys kept it going for ages. When Mom and Bob dropped off a fish, I called it quits, nearly finishing the melody for a second track. Not perfect, but close. I was wiped and knew better than to push it. So I packed up, took longer than I thought, and walked 20 minutes from Mom's to the bar. By the time I arrived, the music was already going. Inside, the place was packed, a band playing an old Ernest Tubb song, Walking the Floor Over You, with a cool piano vibe. "You're back," Victoria whispered, coming up behind me. I turned, smiled, and asked about getting a table. She laughed, pulling me into the kitchen. "Guess who's back?" Victoria called, entering the kitchen. I saw Ron and Amy stop talking, Amy turning away. "Ron, make something for Nicky to eat," she said. "Sure," he smiled, quickly asking what I'd like before diving into making it, not even waiting for me to answer. I chose a grilled chicken sandwich and fruit. "Amy, honey, could you grab Nicky a beer?" Victoria asked. Amy nodded. "Sure," then left. "I told you," Victoria said. I turned to see both Ron and Victoria looking at me, waiting for me to say something. So I stumbled. "She, looks great, right?" Victoria's glare and Ron's skyward plea, "Please let him find some courage," made me laugh. I had my sandwich and beer in the kitchen, chatting with Ron as he and his team finished up orders. After doing the dishes and cleaning up, I walked over to the bar and saw Jimmy Schultz talking to Jenny Cooper. No, Leiden. She looked a bit older, a few more lines on her face, but mostly the same as when we last danced together. She was really into the music, hanging on every word Jimmy said. "Can I get you two something to drink?" I offered, walking up to them when the music took a break. "Nick!" Jenny squealed, hugging me tight. "Jimmy mentioned you were back in town." Over her shoulder, I gave Jimmy a look, and he just nodded. "I'll handle the drinks. You seem to have your hands full," he said with a grin. "When did you find out I was here?" I asked Jenny as she finally let go. "Just before Teddy and the crew started playing," she answered, her gaze drifting back to the stage where Teddy was eyeing us curiously before nodding my way. "Nick," Jenny turned back to me with wide, hopeful eyes. "Teddy's asking if you'd join them for a song. It'd mean the world to the newer guys. They'd never forget it. How about it?" Her eyes were practically begging. "All right, Jenny. For old time's sake," I agreed. She spun around and shouted to Teddy, "He'll do it!" Suddenly, everyone was looking at me. Teddy grabbed the mic. "Folks, you're in for a treat tonight," he announced, and I could see the mix of shock and excitement in the crowd, those who knew me from before. Teddy joked about my guitar skills and my singing, which got everyone laughing and clapping. "Let's see if Nick Harland can still dazzle us with those old tunes," he said, and the room erupted in cheers. My eyes watered. After years of big shows, this small, familiar crowd felt more like home. "Yes, seems like he's a bit nervous," Teddy teased as I made my way up. We hugged tight on stage, amid cheers and jokes about us needing to get on with the show. I grabbed my guitar and with a little help got everything plugged in and ready. "Is this setup good to go?" I checked with Teddy. He nodded, excitement clear in his eyes. The crowd calmed as we started playing, first slowly, then building up. My guitar and Teddy's voice filled the room, and the new kid on the piano caught everyone's attention with a solo. It felt like no time had passed, our music just as strong as ever. After our first song, the applause was overwhelming. Teddy introduced me formally, and I could barely bow before the cheers. "I'd like to stick around, play some more," I whispered to him. "I'd like that." He smiled back. The band seemed up for the challenge, and we jumped into a Bob Dylan classic, refreshed by our energy and the piano kid's talent. By the end of the night, the place was packed, the air filled with music and laughter. We played rock and country classics, taking breaks only to chat and sign autographs. The vibe was amazing, a reminder of the simple joy of playing music with friends for an audience that felt like family. We played only 2 songs by Leadfoot, both made by Teddy and me in the last hour of the show. We saw cars parked along the road for blocks, and the place was packed tight by 1:20. We wrapped up with a tight and sweet version of an old song by Poco, "Keep On Trying." The crowd was wild, and we'd have gone on, but that song wrapped up our set. After, I helped the band pack up. We got free beers and lots of pats on the back from the crowd. By the end, the bar was shutting down with the staff cleaning up. A few folks were still there, finishing their beers in the dimly lit bar. Ron, Victoria, Jenny, Teddy, the rest of us were chatting about doing shows more often so Ron could retire one day. Then I heard a soft but clear voice behind me. It was Amy, looking straight at me. I was speechless. "Got cat's tongue, Nick?" Jenny joked. She left before I could say anything. "You still like her, huh?" Teddy said. "Of course he does," Victoria added. "Just scared to act on it," Ron chimed in. "California changed him." I just smiled and said, "That's the most she's ever spoken to me, ever." "Yeah," said Teddy. "She's a lot if you get to know her." "Takes time," said Victoria. "But you don't have to. Remember, Jenny said you're married. We don't want her or Teddy getting hurt." Victoria's look made me twitch a bit, revealing more than I intended. Ron got the hint when he saw it. "What's up for tomorrow?" Teddy asked. I shrugged. "Probably just chilling. I'm in a good place and don't want to waste it," Teddy caught on. Then he got Jenny's attention. "We want you over for dinner," she said. "We've got around 30 guests and the band will play. Bring your guitar." Jenny held my hand. "We want you to meet our girls. Amy and her boy will be there too." My smile gave me away. Teddy joked about needing some normal company for a change, but we had no clue back then how the next day in Grant City, Illinois would be anything but normal. I woke up late on Saturday, around 11 o'clock. Mom's yelling at people to stay off her lawn snapped me out of bed. She was shouting about her roses. I peeked outside. Sure enough, there was a crowd. I got ready quickly, knowing I had to face the press looking good. No one wants to see their star looking plain. Stepping outside, I told Mom I'd handle it. Facing about a dozen reporters, I got them off the lawn and ready for an interview. "Ladies first, then we go from left to right. Fair?" They agreed. A reporter from Entertainment Tonight kicked off. "The videos of you and Teddy Cooper hit over 10 million views in under 8 hours. Are you leaving Leadfoot to start a new band?" I was caught off guard by the internet speed, but kept my cool. "I'm not leaving Leadfoot. Just visiting home, and Teddy got me on stage. We're old friends." Another reporter asked about me leaving the band amid album recording talks. "No," I replied. "Ethan Rose, our manager, is handling that. I just needed a break." "What about the rumors of trouble with you and Tara Boyd?" one guy asked. "And she's now with Carl Simpson, your band friend?" another quickly added. I smiled, trying to shake off the questions. "Tara and I love each other a lot," I said. "She's busy with her new season work, and I thought this was a good break time, that's all." They pushed for more for half an hour, but I kept mum and stuck to my main tale. Seeing the end near, they thanked me, said sorry to Mom for the mess they caused, and went back to their vans to work on the night news piece. I said sorry to Mom and then told her I was heading to Teddy's for dinner. She said she got an invite weeks ago and would likely join after Bob returned from work. Then I packed my guitars into the Escalade and took off early, using back roads to dodge any news folks, arriving at Teddy's at 12:30. "This way," I heard Teddy's voice. I followed his voice and the smell of cooked pork to the back of the house. He was by a large smoker working on pork shoulders, as 3 kids played in a pool nearby. "Rough morning, huh?" He glanced at me with his iced tea. "They came here too?" I asked. He nodded, clearly not happy. "What did you do?" "Told them to leave or I'd call the cops for trespassing." I laughed, wishing I could do the same. I grabbed a Diet Pepsi and sat down, watching him season the pork. Then we sat together, chatting about all sorts of things and watching the kids play. It got serious for a bit. I said sorry for being distant over 6 years, but he was cool about it. "That's why I avoided that life," he said. "But you chose it, knowing it'd be busy." And that was it. Apology accepted. Then he caught me up on life's changes since we last talked deeply. "Why did you come back?" he asked. I didn't answer, just looked at distant oaks. "You can talk," he said softly. After a pause, I faced him. "Teddy, are you happy?" He looked confused. "Of course, are you?" I sighed. "Not really. Things aren't how I imagined. Maybe they are, but I'm starting to want a different life. It's too much." "Then go," he said simply. "Just leave." I heard something similar from Walter, but coming from Teddy, it hit harder. "It's not easy," I said. "My band, my commitments, and Tara, she wouldn't move here." He nodded. "Is it true?" His face got serious. The reporters asked if Carl was with Tara. Seeing my face, he nodded. He shared a past incident about Carl's behavior, making us both laugh. "And Tara?" I shrugged. "Don't know, Teddy. I care for her. She's fun, sweet. I'm afraid to change things. It's scary." "Let it go," Teddy said, getting us beers. "Have you talked to her?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm scared to. I'll just end up back with her." He nodded. "Find out why she did it. It's the why that matters, not just that she did. It'll show if it's a one-off or a start of more." He joked about celebrities and their ways, making me laugh. "Not my style," I said. "Some folks just see things differently," he added. "Find the reason, then see if you can handle it if it happens again. Think about the future." I thought over his words. Walter didn't see her the way I did, but Teddy made me think deeper about what comes next. "So, if you ended up in a mess like this with Jenny, you think you could let it slide?" "Yeah, I want to think so," he said. "But it's all about why it happened, you know?" He leaned in. "Let me spill a secret," he whispered. "Not naming them, but you likely know who." He found her and her guy, well, in a very close moment. Her first ever, he's pretty sure she wasn't lying about that. But the big deal? Why he left. Tell me, what was it? She didn't love him anymore. He looked straight at me. Some can't handle being solo, right? They find a new person before saying goodbye to the old one. It's how it is sometimes. That's her. Found a new guy, testing if he's a match before making a move. I thought about that. So if Tara found herself in a tough spot, maybe couldn't say no to a temptation, what then? "Like, your relationship's hitting bumps," he hinted. "So you're saying to just overlook it?" "Not at all. But think on it when deciding what's best for your marriage." He leaned back. "Nick, everyone's different. But if the love's real on both ends, maybe try fixing things before calling it quits. Unless it's beyond repair," he added. I accidentally let out a spurt of beer. "Did you just call me a lawnmower?" Jenny yelled out from the kitchen. "No, babe," Teddy yelled back, then whispered to me. "It's your call, Nick. It's tough, but stuff like this, as wrong as it is, it happens. And some work through it, living happily ever after." I nodded, and we switched topics as more folks arrived. I grabbed beers from the kitchen and stopped when I saw Jenny and Amy by the sink, looking all tensed up at my arrival. Jenny tried to play it cool with a quick hug and kiss. Amy, though, couldn't even look at me, barely said hi. They were talking about me, no doubt. Back outside, I handed out drinks. "Something wrong?" asked Teddy. I shook my head, trying to shift back to our music chat, ending up agreeing Warren Zevon and Ray Charles were too different to compare, though both great. With the crowd growing, we cranked up the music, and I pulled out my guitar for some tunes in the shed. Teddy suggested playing Time to Start again, our hit about moving on from heartbreak. I started playing, and there was Amy, caught in the moment with me. The song ended, and there was silence, till Will suggested a break. Soon, it was just me and Amy left. She'd heard my chat with Teddy. I couldn't even fake a smile. "I'm sorry," she said, knowing a bit of my pain. "Thanks," was all I could manage. Why was chatting with her now so easy? Then, "Did you enjoy the song?" She laughed lightly. "It was beautiful," she admitted. She tried to laugh. "Nick, if I go outside now, I'll cry," she said. I smiled, moved the guitar capo to the 2nd fret, and started playing a new song. "Hope this makes you happy," I said, singing "If I Only Had a Brain" from The Wizard of Oz. Tears showed up in her eyes, but she started to wipe them away and laugh, sometimes mouthing the words with me. By the end, she sang softly with me. "Done." I patted the stool next to me. "Come," I said. She looked unsure. "Don't make me beg," I added, maybe a bit sharply. Soon she was sitting by me. I messed with the guitar, catching her eye and smiling now and then. She seemed more open, so I decided to tell her what Ron had been pushing me to say for a decade. I stopped playing and looked at her. "There's something I've had to tell you for so long," I said. She looked worried. "I don't want this to be weird, and I don't really—" She interrupted, touching my arm gently. "Since you asked me to homecoming," she began, not believing I hadn't figured it out. She admitted she messed up, wishing I had asked again. She shared how much she thought about what could have been, especially after her divorce. I was in shock. "Say something, Nick." "Wow," I whispered. It was totally unexpected. She laughed, and soon we both laughed at how strange life turned out. Then she turned serious. "But we can't do this now," she said. "You're married, Nick. I won't be the other woman." After 10 years, it was a relief we could talk at all. "Amy, I don't want to bring my problems into your life," I said, really meaning it. "Okay," she said, but she made it clear she wouldn't wait if I left my wife. "Don't think getting a divorce means you can just come to me. This is about you and your wife." Amy was right. Just as we finished talking, a helicopter landed nearby, bringing more problems my way. Amy and I watched as 2 kids ran shouting, "Uncle Ethan!" I was shocked they knew Ethan that well. I felt guilty for being a stranger to them. Ethan got out, followed by Monty Evans, a big-shot Columbia executive. "You know him?" Amy asked. I headed towards them, Teddy joining us, confused by my angry look. "Hey, guys," Ethan said cheerfully. "Mind if we join?" "Of course not," Teddy said, shaking hands, though I just stared, angry. "What's going on?" I demanded. Monty seemed uncomfortable. "I'm on vacation," I said sharply. Ethan tried to lighten the mood, mentioning a video of us that went viral. "Sorry, Nick," Monty said. "This situation has blown up. Can we talk with the band? Just 15 minutes? "No," I refused. They pleaded, explaining how the video and rumors had caused a huge mess. "Look, Nick," Ethan said, "everyone in LA knows what happened. We need to fix this." And there I was, caught in yet another mess, wondering how things got so complicated. In the next day, it will hit all the news, papers, TV, the web. And his higher-ups are worried about dealing with Ledford now. It's too risky for them. They don't want to lose millions and end up with nothing. If Carl's move leads to a big split, you could be out of a job. Your career could tank if we don't fix this mess fast. I thought about it. At first, I didn't care. I was thinking about quitting anyway. But then, Walter's ditty about having something to do crossed my mind, and I didn't want to shut my options down that much. Monty cut into my thoughts. Things were bad last night, yes, but everything shifted when those videos hit the web today. Teddy grinned. "How?" Ethan's smile was tricky. "Let's wait for everyone." So we walked in silence. I led Ethan and Monty to the barn. Teddy went to get Will, bass player Rob, and drummer Jimbo. I watched them come into the big room. Will was tall, rough, with long fingers. Rob came out from behind Will, showing off blonde hair, blue eyes, and a strong build. Jimbo looked really good. About 5'10", not skinny or big. Just like farm boys in Grant City are. His hair was styled neat, and his face showed everything he felt. All 3 were uneasy as Teddy caught them up. Teddy looked oddly happy. I had a guess as to why. Teddy seemed calm, not impatient or distant, just quietly smiling. "Boys," Monty started, looking at the 3 college guys. "Your show last night got a lot of, let's say, interest." They smirked at each other, knowing about their YouTube hit. "That's fine," Monty said, "but my boss got a call today and now he's interested too." "Go on," Ethan urged. "Say who it was." Monty's eyes sat on Teddy. "Bob Dylan. Believe it or not. Said he was blown away. Singing. Arrangement. The works." Teddy reacted like it was just another day. Me, though, I couldn't hide my shock and smiled at the high five between Will and Jimbo. You might not be a Dylan fan, but in the music world, he's a legend. When Bob Dylan talks, which isn't often, record bosses listen. Teddy, it's not like we loved every single thing, Monty went on. I spent the morning watching the rest of your show's videos. To be honest, they weren't great. But we want to see more, if that's okay. Teddy just nodded. Monty nodded back. If that's okay. Teddy turned to us, then me. We all knew what that meant. My eyes stayed on Ethan. After a bit, he nodded too. All of you, he said. Teddy looked at me, his smile dropping a bit. I'm in, he said, but unsure. Me too, I said. Teddy sighed deeply. Okay, he said. You guys play again? I'll bring everyone. Wait, Monty said. We'd like to watch without others around, if that's fine. Teddy ignored him. Ethan and Monty looked at me for backup. Don't look at me, I said. If you want this, better get used to it. And so we did. We played 4 more songs, 2 lively ones, a ballad, and a mid-tempo. Monty filmed it all on a camera to show the folks in L.A. The sound wouldn't be great, but better than a phone video on YouTube. When done, Monty thanked us and turned down food to call us later. Ethan stayed for the meal. I felt guilty for being away when I saw almost everyone knew Ethan. It was past the hour, and I was with Teddy pulling pork from the smokehouse. Really into this? I asked. Let's talk in private, he said. We left the pork under foil. I talked with Mom, Dr. Bob, and Will. Mom dropped a big news. She picked Will, Rob, and Jimbo from Chadwick College for Teddy. Just ask the music teachers who's good. Set them up with Teddy. He'll handle it from there. Later, Teddy had me help him slice pork in the kitchen. He gave me these plastic claws to use. We worked on turning pound 50 of pork into BBQ before he finally talked. Let me settle in, okay? He said. The answer's yes. I've thought it over. I stayed quiet, not sure what to say. After a bit, I saw Teddy wasn't cutting anymore and looked over. He was staring at me. Say something. Okay, I shot back. Do you have any clue what you're stepping into? What kind of world you're dragging your family into? He gave me that easy smile of his. I know what I'm doing, he said. We've been getting ready for this moment for years. I waited for him to say more. More came when Ethan came in through the kitchen door. He checked us out and said, You're not going to tell him now, are you? Yes, Teddy said. Better to get it done with. Tell me what? I asked, feeling a cold fear. Ethan didn't answer but got another pair of bear claws from a drawer. Then he started cutting the pork with us. I realized he knew his way around. Even Ethan, the Jewish kid from Jersey, knew how to work with the pork. I never knew he didn't stick to the kosher rules and even knew where we kept our kitchen stuff. Now I got it. This was all planned, and I got back to work wanting an answer. Finally, Ethan spoke up. To be honest, he said your band's sound hasn't hit the mark since your second album. You're a solid songwriter, but your best stuff came when you worked with Teddy. I nodded. He was right, of course. We had been living off our early fame, but it was enough to sell millions of albums and pack arenas. So, 5 years ago, Ethan went on, a bit after the Grammys that saw you guys peak, I flew to see Teddy. I noticed my songwriting was slipping and I wanted Teddy's thoughts, so he showed me his work. He was still writing. I looked up. I had no idea Teddy was still at it. We definitely didn't play any of that last night. It's no good, Teddy said. Good enough for an album, Ethan added, but not a hit. You've always been the stronger songwriter, Nick, Teddy added. Ethan's been trying for 5 years to get me back with you, so why not just call? I asked. We could have worked together, kept out of the other stuff. I was going to, Teddy said. A year and a half ago, I asked Ethan to reach out. But you were in the thick of recording Cactus Rose, Ethan said, naming our latest album. All the songs were written and you were tired from recording. The timing was off, and the record contracts were running low. So why didn't you just wait and tell me later? I wondered. Neither looked at me, waiting for their answer. I dropped the bear claws and rested my hands on the counter. Come clean, guys, I said, a bit mad. Teddy spoke up first. About 5 months ago, you gave Ethan the next batch of songs. You'd just finished an American tour and spent almost all of it writing. He gave them to me to look over, and I really worked on them. This was news to me, but didn't seem like a big issue. Okay, cool. So they're better than I thought. But then my good mood faded. Ethan, those songs we were talking about are mine. Teddy never touched them. Crap, Ethan said. Nick, I got those songs back 2 months ago, right before we started talking. They're better, way better. Then why aren't we using them? Because Ethan found out about Carl and Tara a week before he got my versions, Teddy said. My anger rose, my teeth clenched, and I had to keep my fists on the counter. You knew about this for 2 months and said nothing. I turned to Teddy. And you? You just told me to find the truth before deciding a few hours ago. Did you know? They looked at each other, then back at me. My advice doesn't change, Teddy said. Neither of us knows how long it lasted, how many times it happened. But Teddy, you should have told me. Now he put down the bear claws. When, Nick? When should I have told you? You haven't shared anything in 6 years. Think about it, 6 long years. You didn't even know I got married. I felt mad, but also ashamed. He had a point. I mailed you a wedding invite, Nick. You ignored it. Didn't even send a card. And you wonder when I should have told you. Why bother? Theodore Cooper, Jenny called from the doorway. We all looked her way, her face scaring us. You have guests, she hissed. They don't need to hear this. This nonsense, do they? We mumbled sorry and went back to the pork. She left, then cheered up the guests outside. I didn't see your invite, Teddy. I'm sorry for that. Truth is, feeling awful since I saw you. You were doing great, and I had no right to expect that. And what I said still stands, he said. You still need to figure things out, even if it was just a few times, and if you can deal with the why. I'm not saying I'd stick with her, but I'm not you. And I think you really should see this through. I nodded. Then I turned to Ethan. But do you care? I asked, my voice calm. It's all about the cash, right? You were scared to tell me because you thought it would end the group and no more money for you, right? No, Nick, he replied. It's not just the cash. You're like a brother to me. You and Teddy are the only ones I really got along with. I just didn't want to see you alone in the dust. You left LED Foot with no plan and, well, I'm not sure. I just know I didn't want you to fade away. Got it? And he told you this? Teddy asked. No, he didn't, I said. I caught them, Teddy. I caught them because I had finished my talk 3 hours before, Ethan explained. You knew they'd be there? He nodded. I asked someone to watch Carl when he arrived at your house. I was told right as we started. Remember how mad I got and left early? Why didn't you just tell me? Would you have trusted me? Over Tara or Carl, I wondered. Well, Carl, for sure, I doubt. But he was right. I'd have been angry if he said Tara was unfaithful. Then why did you try to bring me back? To talk? He thought you wouldn't leave. Teddy mentioned he thought you'd confront him or ask for Carl to be removed, which I did say right away. Carl cut in. Or you'd just leave LED Foot. Teddy finished. Meanwhile, I wanted to show you Teddy's new lyrics. Try for a record deal and rescue your career, Ethan added. And help find a new bass player. And you were in on this? I asked Teddy. His silence was enough. Yes, it was all too sudden. Honestly, I was upset. But why be mad at them? I doubt I would have done it differently. Sure, Ethan cared about his money, but he was really looking out for me and LED Foot, for which we paid him a lot. Then it hit me. If this was all for keeping LED Foot together and Teddy was back writing songs, then what was today about? No one at Columbia has seen anything like this, Ethan said. Those videos on YouTube, they're amazing. Sure, you're in them, and that gets a lot of people interested. But these videos are much more than that. Heck, they're like Susan Boyle from Britain. Right, it's even bigger. The internet went wild. Monty checked before we got here, and 3 out of the 7 videos had over 20 million views and the others over 15 million. And you're not ignoring Bob Dylan now, are you? Teddy said with his laid-back smile. Not if I want to keep my job at Columbia? No, Ethan agreed, so they were checking if this could make money. Right after Dylan called, Monty called me to see if it could work. You two back together. I ran to him with the new lyrics. He read them and just dropped all the songs on the floor. Ethan grinned. If I had shown him those from the start, we'd have the contract by now. And now Carl is really in a tight spot. My anger faded and I almost smirked. So he's really in trouble, huh? Worse than you think, Ethan said, relieved I was no longer upset. He's nearly broke. Really? Teddy said. Ethan nodded. He's burning cash faster than he can make it. And unlike you two, he doesn't get song royalties. His album sales bring in some cash, but it's not enough for his luxury life. Nick, you and Tara have a nice place in Brentwood. But have you seen Carl's places? His ski house in Aspen, his condo in New York, his mansion in Malibu? He even got an apartment in London. What's he doing in London? I laughed. Chasing London girls, Teddy suggested, making us all laugh. We finished slicing the pork and set it on trays. I hung back as Ethan took the first tray outside. Teddy, I said. He stopped. I'm really sorry, man. He turned. I might have been too harsh, he said. I shook my head. No, you were right. I felt lost, and I can't believe I missed the wedding invite. He gave a lazy smile. Maybe I did too much, he said. I sent it to your house during your tour knowing you'd miss it. Sorry, man, but I wanted a simple wedding. Having LED foot there wouldn't be simple. Jerk, I said. Easy, he replied. We took our trays outside to the deck, next to the bread on the tables. Looking around, I saw Amy staring at me, thinking. Teddy walked over, kissed her, and whispered something. She looked at me again and seemed more at ease. I smiled, and she smiled back. Then, I wanted to be the one to comfort her. I grabbed my beer and went to be alone with my thoughts. I realized Tara had been unfaithful more times than I knew, and it had been going on. I doubted I could ever get past it, sure that my marriage was over. Yet I decided to take Teddy's advice and at least listen to her. After being together for 5 years, I really wanted to know all about what she did, or at least as much as she was ready to share. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned. Penny for your thoughts, Amy said gently, recalling what my dad used to say. I replied, some days you're a bird, and some days you're a stone. She laughed, her face shining with joy. I had never heard her laugh or seen her look so happy. Her laugh made me feel light and happy. So, which one are you? She asked. A bird or a stone? I just smiled widely. Not sure, I told her, but it feels like it's getting better. I had no clue what tomorrow would bring. You better get up, Walter whispered near me. I turned, surprised to find him up so early. The clock showed just past 9 and I had slept enough. What's wrong? I wondered. He glanced outside, then at me. That girl didn't wait. He said she's on TV this morning saying she's leaving you because you're chasing other women. I smiled. This must be a strange dream, I thought he said. I said, get out of bed. He growled. The blankets flew off me, as if yanked by unseen hands. I was stunned. He had never done anything like this, and I didn't know he could move things. Yeah, he said, like a real ghost. Now get up and get ready. The press will be here any moment. He was right, so I quickly got ready. In 15 minutes, I was in the kitchen with a worried Dr. Bob and an angry Carol. Heard yet? Carol demanded. I nodded. No need to ask how I knew. Is it true? She snapped. I shook my head. Not once, I said. I told you, Bob said, patting my back. The phone rang. Carol picked it up, said hello, and handed it to me. It's Ethan, she said. Good morning, I greeted. Not yet, he answered, sounding more awake than I realized. But it will be a very good morning soon. What's happening? I asked. Looks like they've rushed it, he said. Tara's agent and publicist think you're done and have started to defend her image, making her look like the victim. I nodded. Jesus, why do this without talking to me? I would have stayed quiet. This is the last kind of trouble we needed. What's your plan? I asked. I'll tell you when you're here, he replied. Where? To Teddy's place? Wait for the media, then drive here. Why wait? I asked. So they follow you, not bothering your mom on a Sunday morning. What about Teddy's family? We're fine, Teddy said on the line. Half an hour later, I arrived at Teddy's with a line of news vans behind me. They must have learned from before because they parked on the side, not on Teddy's land. So what happened? I asked, now in Teddy's living room. This, Teddy said, turning on his TV. A talk show appeared. Tara, the interviewer started, faking kindness. Rumor has it you're having marriage trouble. Is that true? Tara tried to smile, but couldn't. A good try. I'd seen her try to fake it many times. Sensing a chance, the interviewer pressed on. Sorry if this is tough, but rumors say you're seeing Carl Simpson, your husband's bandmate. Is that true? Tara began softly, the camera closing in, pretending pain. Carl and I are just friends, she claimed. We've been seen together, but he's only supporting me during this hard time. The interviewer barely hid his excitement. And what tough thing is happening now? Tara's look turned determined. Nick is cheating, she stated. Carl was the one who told me. I didn't believe it at first, but my agent, a close old friend, made me check. We found out Carl was right. How many women? The interviewer pushed, not hiding her luck. I'd rather not say, Tara replied. I confronted him last Wednesday and he left. I haven't seen him since. Teddy turned off the TV and faced me. Trying to look relaxed, he just seemed upset. Ethan, though, was smiling. Well, he said, looks like we've been overtaken by events. I nodded. Looks like Tara and I won't have that talk. She's made her move, and now I'll play with what she's given me. Actually, from a tricky deck and cut her from my life. Now it's up to you, Ethan continued. We can let her get away with it, or we can bury her. I raised an eyebrow and waited for him to go on. I've been keeping track of her moves since I found out, Ethan said. We have photos, videos, and written statements. After our chat yesterday, I also talked to Ella and asked several people to look further. I got word from them this morning, and it seems like we might hear more soon. My jaw just dropped, I said. Yeah, Ethan replied. Turns out she was close with a bunch of her work friends. Almost everyone in the cast and crew knows, and some are ready to spill all the dirty facts. I felt cold all over. This kind of drama is normal in Hollywood, but I never thought my own marriage, my own love, was just part of the act. These past few days showed me I was just another piece in America's favorite couple's perfect lie. She seemed so bright, so full of love. No more. So what's it gonna be? Ethan asked. I looked at Teddy. He was staring back, his jaw tight. Bury her, Jenny shouted from the kitchen. I chuckled. You? I looked at Teddy. He nodded. Talking won't help. Good, buddy. You've got all you need to figure out where you stand with your marriage. Let's talk about what you can do, I told Ethan. If we do nothing, nothing changes. But then your work takes a hit. Any talks for new deals with Mustang Ranch will be tough. Come on, I said. It's not new. Mick Jagger made it through. Ethan laughed. True, he said. But Mick Jagger was always seen as the bad guy. You, on the other hand, were the quiet, thoughtful one. A good guy. If you don't address it, you might ruin that image. Columbia's risking millions on you suddenly becoming unknown. Remember, Nick, you've got fans in country and rock. The rock fans might not care, but Marge from Mississippi, who goes to church every Sunday, she'll have a problem with you. I looked out the window at the vans lined up along the road, then turned to Ethan again. Okay, I said, show me how to handle this. He smiled wide and opened his briefcase. 20 minutes later, Teddy had the press ready in the barn. They were all set when I walked in. Nick, they all yelled. Questions flew at me like rain. When they calmed down, I started. Same rules as yesterday. The ladies first, then from left to right for the men. I looked at the young girl who had been first the day before. Excuse me, but you were first yesterday, I said, then turned to the smart-looking woman who had been sick the day before. Mr. Harland, she started, her voice cold and her eyes angry. She could have been mad about my trick the day before or upset thinking I had tricked poor Tara Boyd. Ethan figured she'd be the perfect one to start with, and her tone told me everything was going as planned. Ms. Lockhart, I replied, trying to look sad. Mr. Harlan, your wife told Valerie Plymouth this morning that you wrecked your marriage by seeing a lot of other people. Is this true? I took a deep breath, looked at the reporters, and turned back to the lady who thought she had caught me. I'm sad to say Tara was partly right, I began. At those words, cameras flashed. It helped me keep a sad look as I went on. Tara was right, our marriage is over. But she's wrong about me being untrue to her. With that, I showed what was in my folder. Then I turned to the girl from Entertainment Tonight. Your turn, Miss Miller, I said. So you're saying you never cheated on your wife? Not once, I said. If she has proof of the opposite, like she claimed this morning, I'd like to see it. Because until Wednesday, when I found my wife and a close friend together at our place, I thought we were perfect. Now I know we're not. Are you saying she was the one cheating? The first man asked, cameras flashing and mics moving closer. Sadly, yes, I replied. That's what I'm saying. Do you have proof? The older woman pushed, clearly not believing. Your turn, I said to the next man, ignoring her question. Do you have proof of what you're saying? He asked. This report from a detective agency in Malibu, California, I said, showing the documents. As you'll see, my wife wasn't honest this morning. This report confirms it. What wasn't she honest about? Another reporter jumped in. She's been seeing Carl Simpson a lot over the last 2 months, I said, my voice shaking at the end. I had to gather myself and felt a rush of thrill inside. I played the role of the hurt husband to the fullest. This report has dates, photos, and more, I continued after a bit. Also, I've been told this wasn't the first time in our marriage. Do you know who the others were? Someone yelled. I'd rather not say, I replied, putting the report back. My manager will give you a cleaned-up version of this report soon. For now, I just want you to know I loved my wife with everything I had, and I thought it was the same from her. I was true to my love for Tara from day one, and never would I dream of hurting our bond. I kept my heart faithful, sure I'd never stray. But learning Tara didn't hold us the same tore me apart. I pushed aside the questions, raising my hands for quiet. Folks, I began, I get your curiosity, but please, let me sort this in peace, with close ones who've been here since the shock hit a few days back. With that, I left the barn, Ethan taking over. How'd it go? Teddy checked in. I felt wiped. The thrill gone, the weight of my smashed marriage and Tara's betrayals hit hard. I was blind to it all. Now eyes worldwide would watch. Jenny's hug came with tears. You deserved better, Nick. I just hugged her, fighting my own tears. I managed just. By midday, the reporters were gone and the group gathered. Any news? Jimbo threw out there for all. He's on his way, Ethan let out. First I heard. Teddy saw my look. We're just listening, he said. We'll chat after. Fine by me. A surprise, but hearing them out couldn't hurt. Soon Monty arrived, driving a fancy car. Once settled in the living room, he shared, Columbia wants to sign you. Exchanges of glances and nods. Then Teddy cut to the chase. Terms? Monty laid them out. Not perfect, but promised bonuses if we hit sales goals, almost matching what Leadfoot got, surprisingly, given their fame. My spot was key to the deal, Monty stressed. So, Leadfoot's over? I asked. He confirmed. Tara's actions that morning sealed it. My honest response, though right for me, spelled doom for the band under current strains. What if Carl goes? Ethan suggested. Monty shook his head. Doesn't fix it. Replacing him added unknowns, plus there was the songwriting bit. Monty turned to Teddy. They're keen on both you and Nick's music, he said, but it's the unique sound of all five that's got them interested. Yet it was a gamble for the record labels. Thus, the terms. They were betting safe with me and Teddy, but believed in the group's rare vibe. Monty waited as we processed. I have terms, Teddy said, his voice firm, all eyes on him. He put family first, agreeing to give it 2 years. Ethan checked if we were cool with that. Heads nodded, save for Monty, who warned it might tweak the contract terms. Terms stay, Teddy insisted, with a fallback if he stepped back after 2 albums. In exchange, the label could lock us for a 4th album without Teddy's opt-out. Monty pondered, then nodded. I'll work with it, he conceded, asking for time to confirm we were all in. Johnny walked in as Monty stepped out. Sounds like a solid offer, Teddy explained to her. She looked my way, seeking assurance, with everyone's eyes on me and Amy by the kitchen, silent. I knew choices were mine to make. Here I was, just hours past my marriage's end, weighing in on the future. So, the band that was my whole world for the last 10 years? Gone. And here I was, having to choose in just 2 hours if I wanted to start again with an old friend I'd not seen in forever, and 3 people I barely knew online. Without a word, I stepped out for air. In 10 minutes, I was stopped by a soft voice. I think Teddy really wants to try, said Amy. He's talked about it for so long. Leaving the band was a big regret. That's why he gave those songs to Ethan. He wanted to come back. I turned to her. It's just... this is all so fast, you know? She nodded, her face full of understanding. I just needed some time, I said. But that's gone now. She touched my shoulder. Not really, she said. Teddy and Johnny, they've got your back. The band, it's something to keep you busy, to help you forget the mess. And you? I asked. Me? She seemed surprised. It doesn't matter how I feel. If you do this, go back to playing shows, recording. How does that make me feel? She knew we'd reach this topic, even if I hadn't thought about it till now. How I feel doesn't change anything, she said. She took my hand, leading me across the grass towards the trees at the lot's end. Nick, she said, right now it's just you and me. There's no us. You get that, right? I kept quiet, and she took that as a cue to keep talking. Yeah, I like you, she admitted. From what I've known, sure, but we're not who we used to be. We barely knew each other back then. I'm just a part of your past, someone you think might be easy to be with after all that's happened. But this is happening to you, Nick. Can you see that? Right. She was right. I was living in the past, hoping for comfort. But maybe I want to get to know you now, I said. That's okay, she whispered. We can do that. But I won't just jump into this. Not now, not when your marriage is barely holding on. I can't. My son doesn't need that kind of trouble again. I listened, looked into her eyes. Of course she was right. Yet I kissed her. Her lips were soft, and for a moment she kissed me back. But then she pulled away. Damn it, Nick, she said, her face a mix of anger and shame. Thank you, I whispered, for giving me something good to dream about, and maybe something to look forward to. Her anger faded, and she hugged me tight. I hugged her back, feeling good for the first time in a while. Enjoy this, she said. That's all you're getting for now. And she was right. That was as close as we